Fantastic. So, hey, Jill, good to be here and good to be here with you. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to share.
I'm grateful.
So early on, I had been following this fairly formal structure that I'd received from the Search Inside Yourself programs, and I sort of gateway between the secular business world and the world of internal transformation. And the last few weeks, I've been doing things a little bit free form, which is the way I used to teach most of the time was free form, and it was always topical based on what was alive and active for me at any given time. So it's the thing is with us humans, there are some strong themes that resonate, and they're perennial themes. So what's been on my mind these days is just dealing with difficulty, dealing with pain, dealing with disappointment, and so forth. So, as far as perennial themes go, that's a pretty good one. It's a pretty live one. What I'd love to have us do is just invite us to reset a little bit at the beginning with some meditation, and then I'll get into this topic of dealing with difficulty. So we can begin just as usual by settling in with our body. There's such a close tie between our body and our state of mind. So we just make sure we're sitting comfortably and take a deep breath in and out, just allowing ourselves to reset physically, reset mentally. Another deep breath in and out, just inviting ourselves to relax. And another deep breath in and out, just asking ourselves what is important now. Physical and mental peace together with focus. This is the essence of meditation, physical and mental peace together with focus. So we can keep this focus just internally for a while, just assessing what's happening inside our body right now, knowing that what's in our body is closely tied to our mind. You just try to feel, awaken our limbs, awaken our bodily sense, and just feel what's going on inside. If our mind wanders, we return to this feeling inside our body, noticing how it changes as we breathe. And then we can think in the short time we have together here, what would be the best possible outcome? What would be the direction we would like to take our lives, starting from this place? How could we benefit ourselves and others? And then with this good motivation, we can open our eyes and relax our concentration. So at the at the beginning, I was mentioning to, or I was saying that there are these certain universal themes that arise for all of us, right? Certain strong themes that are perennial and universal for humans, and that. As I've expressed before, I'm teaching these classes from a secular point of view, although my background was included, Buddhist training. And the difference between what is secular and what is spiritual is interesting to ponder. And it's something that's very sort of alive for me. Where's the boundary? Is there a boundary, right? At what point does something become secular? At what point does it become spiritual? And I think a lot of it comes down to the language that we use, and the language that we use and the way that we describe things. That there is, when people talk in terms of spiritual language or whatever, they're talking about these huge, perhaps invisible entities, God, or demons or whatever is the way that we frame it. These invisible entities that have great power, and whether we believe in those things that are seen or unseen or not, what we can say is that they do have an influence on our mind, like the belief, for example, the belief in God exists. Whether God exists or not, you could debate, but the belief in God exists, and that belief has a function in our mind. Every belief functions. All of the ways that we see things function, the way that we describe the world functions to guide our mind in particular directions. And there's no question that there are these big forces in our subconscious, if you want. For example, I've been thinking a lot about how we respond to authority and how we respond to power, and how from a young age, like I was saying a week or so ago, you don't go to school to learn how to learn. You already knew how to learn. You've been learning from the moment you were born. You go to school to learn how to be socialized. That's a lot of it, how to respond to a teacher who's authority figure, how to, move in an orderly way through these lessons and so forth. And so from a very young age, we build in these mental pictures of what authority is like and how we should respond to power, how we should respond to competitors and so forth. So there are these big themes that move in our mind, these sort of archetypal themes, if you want. And if you give a name to those things, you could give like a spiritual name to those things or not, or you just describe them in psychological terms. But there's no question that our mind is operating with these assumptions. There are these sort of big underlying themes: friend, enemy, pain, success, control, knowledge, lack of knowledge, fear, these big sort of movements in our mind. And if you give these, spiritual names, then you're giving a religious teaching or something like that. But if you give them just psychological names, then you're just basically talking about how we move through difficulties in our world. And what's been top of mind for me recently is dealing with pain and difficulties, which is talk about perennial theme, right? There's a theme. It's the sponsoring. It's the sponsor of 2020. Pain and difficulty is brought to you by 2020, brought to you by pain and difficulty. The practice that relates to this in at least in the Buddhist tradition, but naturally just in our psychology, is the practice of patience. Like, how do we respond to difficulties? So patience is the word that's used to describe a positive response to difficulties. And so if you're encountering some difficulty, loss, pain, you don't know what to do, you've got a headache, people don't like you, you're losing you lost your job or whatever, whatever the difficulties you're facing, what is a positive way to respond to those? Well, let's frame that in terms of what's a not so helpful way to respond to those. Feeling overwhelmed can actually make those difficulties worse. So if we have some pain and then we panic, that actually will make it worse. And one of the problems with panic attacks is that they feed on themselves, right? So you start panicking and then you're like, oh no, I'm going to have a panic attack. Oh, I'm having a panic attack. And then you panic because you're having a panic attack. So that's called a positive feedback loop. It's like a fire starts and then the fire burns up more. If a fire starts in a piece of wood, it keeps burning. So that would be an example of a not helpful response to difficulty. But in contrast, that motto, right? Don't panic. that baseline motto, don't panic. And then to just face that difficulty, to absorb it a little bit, and then to respond peacefully. That's the essence of patience, is to be able to absorb a difficult situation, accept it, and then to respond peacefully. The analogy, there's a lot of analogies, but one analogy is the analogy of a thunderstorm in the sky, right? So a thunderstorm can be incredibly dramatic, right? Noise, light, rain, clouds, it's scary. Like if you have dogs, thunderstorms are scary, right? And fireworks and thunderstorms terrify creatures. So you can imagine all the terror caused by creatures in the forest during a thunderstorm. But that's a psychological reaction that those animals are having, right? Is there really a reason to be panicking because of fireworks? No, it's just the way that the dog is responding. It's an instinctive, innate response. But think about how the sky responds to a thunderstorm. The lightning going through the sky, clouds going through the sky, rain, noise, and so forth. And the sky is just there, right? Thunderstorms come and they go, and the sky, there's this underlying spaciousness, right? Pain, fear, problems, and so forth, they all happen in the space of our mind. And you can think brain if you want, it's some reactions in the brain, or you can think of the mind is a different, the brain is a physical thing. The mind is the experience, is the experiential thing. Mind is basically the space in which information flows. So pain is just bad news. It's like your body is giving you bad news. Your mind is giving you bad news. It's a version of bad news. It's just information. Bad news is just information. If you were, anyway, so think of your mind as being like space, and bad news, pain, difficulties being like a thunderstorm in that space. The thunderstorm doesn't have any power to destroy the space. It happens inside there, just like an actor who's, violently parading around the stage is not actually destroying the stage. They may make noise, they're screaming, they're yelling, they're acting in the most terrifying way, but they're not destroying the stage. And so our mind is the stage on which all of these difficulties play out. And so our mind has almost infinite capacity to accept difficulties, and with a peaceful, in a peaceful way. It's just what happens is we tend to have these reactions and responses, and we trigger these very innate responses, kind of like a dog being terrified by thunder, instead of like the sky being unaffected by lightning. So we have these reactions, and these reactions are very instinctive and they're very deep. And often they make things worse. So our own mental reactions to pain and difficulties can often make things worse. So the essence of patience is, first, don't make things worse. That's the essential meaning of don't panic. Just don't make things worse. Okay, that's bad. That's bad. Okay, everybody can agree. Bad news, terrible news, worst news. Okay, let's not make it any worse with our reactions. So, okay, here we are. The past, for example, is completely gone. So there is absolutely zero we can do about the past. We might have made a mistake. Somebody else might have made a mistake. Something terrible happened in the past. There's absolutely nothing we can do about the past right now. And so an enormous amount of the pain that we experience when something goes wrong is just thinking, oh, I shouldn't have gone. I shouldn't have done that. I should have done things differently. And well, that actually, there's a little bit of learning. You can learn a little bit what to do next time, but there's nothing you can do to undo the past. And so that's kind of a direction that our mind will head in. That's not helpful, second guessing and so forth. And so just even reconciling ourselves with the reality of the present moment, and that, okay, here we are, is one of the most powerful things we can do. Because once you reconciled yourself with, okay, here we are. I didn't want to be here. I didn't expect to be here, but here we are. What is the most positive thing we could do from this place? Already, if you want to get competitive about it, already you're ahead of like 95% of the typical instinctive reactions that we have to these things. So you're already ahead. You're just like, okay, just accepting the difficult situation. You still might have no idea how to solve it. Now, what's interesting is that sometimes we make the situation worse by thinking that we should have a solution. And I am a very solution-oriented person, and that's is kind of a good quality, right? And I think probably all of us are very solution-oriented people. Right? There's something, okay, let's see how we can make it better. Um, and it's kind of a good thing. And I probably even have it on my resume someplace. Oh, solution-oriented person, right? But um, we can be tricked into thinking we're supposed to have a solution to every problem. But sometimes, like, one of the most common places this happens is when somebody comes to us with their problems. It's very instinctive to think, oh, well, I guess I'm being asked to find a solution. Well, okay, have you tried this and have you tried that? And I do that a lot. That's the natural tendency, and it normally doesn't help. Like the person's not really, they might say, oh, I tried that, or it's very easy for us to get into for there to be a little bit of arrogance mixed in with that as well. Like, oh, well, why don't you try just, talking to the person? And they might say, well, I did that. And we keep trying to come up with a solution that would solve it. But oftentimes we don't necessarily have the power to solve a situation. So for example, if someone's been diagnosed with a terminal illness, I mean, it certainly happens, there may be absolutely nothing we can do. Like, we just physically, literally cannot do anything to solve it. And even if somebody else could, we can't, perhaps. Somebody might have lost their job, and we might not have a way to find them a next job. But just even being with them is very powerful. And just listening and allowing them to express and being with them, sometimes that's what people are really looking for. And that's the main thing they're looking for if they approach us with their problems. There was a very beautiful, my wife and I watched this documentary of Ram Dass called Becoming Nobody. And in there, there was a clip where he was saying he felt he was one of the very unusual people who really, 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 really enjoyed being with people when they were dying. And that's very unusual, to have somebody who would actually say they enjoy being with somebody while they're dying. But his point of view was, death is one of these natural transitions, like birth, for example, or so many other things. And there's nothing you can do at that time. And the person's definitely going to die. But just being there and being able to witness this profound event, when the personality that we've built up over time ceases to be that person, where that we build up a person, we accumulate our history and so forth. And at some point, that accumulated self that we've become, that history of ourself that we've built up, at some point that person will cease. And at some point, all of the people that we know will cease. And this is definitely our future. This is, there's no question, this is the future for everybody that we know and so forth. And we're normally very, very terrified of that, because partly because it makes us feel powerless, because we feel like we don't have a solution. It's like the ultimate inability to come up with a solution. There's a lot of things where we do try to successfully come up with solutions, but at some point at the end, as one of my teachers put it, everyone loses in the end. And there's a sense in which we have to come to peace with that. And one interesting thing that happens often when people are dying is that it is the family that hasn't come to peace with that, but the dying person can. So my wife tells the story of her mom dying of cancer 15 years ago. And the doctor knew it was fatal, but the doctor kept coming into her mom and trying to reassure her and say, "Oh, you'll be okay," and so forth. And the mom was like, her body was changing dramatically. She was in really felt like something dramatic was going on. But her husband, my wife's father, and the doctor were all saying, "Oh, we'll keep trying this. You'll probably be okay." But privately, they were saying, "Oh, no, she might not last all week." last week. And so it was my wife who came to her and said, "Mom, you're dying. You're definitely dying." And at that point, her mom's mindset just shifted, because she's like, "Oh, well, why didn't anybody tell me?" Right? And it shifted the conversation, and it gave her a chance to just accept and to move towards accepting that. But often it's the families who are trying to hang on to the person being alive, or the doctors have to try something else and so forth. And it actually disturbs the peace of the person who's trying to die. And so there is a point where, once we've tried everything we can to sustain our life or somebody else's life, there will come a time where we are definitely dying. And to be able to accept that and just see it as one of these incredible life events, right, opens us up to even experiencing joy at that time, at that final moment of death. And that was what Ram Dass was referring to, in terms of actually enjoying being with that person. And that is a situation where you absolutely have no solution, but you're just being there with the person. And so you think about it, though, you're sharing this most intimate experience with another person, and you're just being there with them, and you're just being company with them without panicking, without freaking out. And just even being with them and being calm ourselves is like giving them permission to be calm. And if there is nothing you can do about a situation, then you absolutely don't want to be making it worse with your own reactions. Instead, we can just be peaceful and accepting that situation. And so peace and acceptance is only a fairly small step away from joy. And that's what's very interesting, right? That our mind has this natural capacity to produce joy when we're really relaxed, right? That's what we say, "I'm enjoying myself," right? "I'm just sitting on the couch," right? "Oh, I'm just enjoying." Our mind has a natural capacity to relax. When your body relaxes, you can be lying on the couch, but your mind still hasn't relaxed. But if your mind relaxes, right, that's real enjoyment comes naturally, right? So we know there's some tie between enjoyment and peace. So when people come to us with their difficulties, we don't necessarily have to have a solution, because trying to have a solution can make us more anxious and actually make the problem a bit worse. So, and just being with somebody else is a powerful way of just making something more bearable, because you're not doing it alone. There are then at least two people who are witness to this challenging situation. And it's easier to be in a difficult situation with somebody else than it is to be alone. And so that's, I think, what he was speaking to when he said he actually enjoys the process of being with someone who's dying, because he knows actually there's nothing to fight against. And in fact, you are helping just by being there, and just by being witness to that and being open to that, and whatever the experience is. So I've obviously fast forwarded to the end. You're probably, I didn't want to give away the ending, but that's how the story ends. I guess rewinding back to the present moment, the things we're dealing with on a daily basis are less dramatic and less fatalistic, of course, but the same dynamic applies, right? There are limits to what we can do to help other people. If they're dealing with things in their personal life that are outside of our power, we may not be able to help them. There are limits to what we can do, how much we can get done in a period of time and so forth. And so there comes this need to be accepting. But we think about this acceptance as a space in which we can then take action, not feeling like we have to take action, we're expected to take action, or if we don't take action, we're a failure or something like that. But just accepting the situation, and then if there is the opportunity to help, naturally just wanting to help. And the reason, just to come back around to the beginning, the reason I mentioned these sort of big movements in our mind is, and these big psychological factors that you could frame as spiritual factors, is that there is something sacred about difficulties, because difficulties change us in deeper ways. They force us to change in ways we really would never have changed otherwise. So, and we can have a kind of gratitude or respect for, even for the people who are causing difficulties in our life, even to the point of having, so there's different levels of respect, but one of the highest levels of respect is faith, right? And so that's a topic that's in religious terms. You use that term faith, but it really just means deep, deep, deep respect. And sometimes faith can be unshakable respect, that no matter what we see, we'll never lose respect. We can just hang on to that respect. But even if our faith is not that strong, we still can appreciate the power of respect. And so we can respect or even have faith in difficult people by acknowledging that they are, well, we can have faith in difficult situations and just think, this situation is my teacher. This situation is the real teacher. All of the teachers who just use words, that's maybe some preliminary preparatory thing, but a difficult situation is a teacher in the sense that it's really helping me to change. I might have tried to do, meditation and so forth to learn how to keep a peaceful mind. But finally, it's only when the world is really difficult around us, almost falling apart around us, and we're then able to maintain a peaceful mind. That's the real teaching. That's the thing that really drives us into deeper levels of inner peace. The interesting thing about difficulties, the things that challenge our inner peace, are also the things that enable us to find deeper levels of resilience. And that's why often people find real transformation coming out of the worst circumstances in their life. When I was teaching meditation full time, often the people who would come to the meditation centers, they were going through recovery from drug addiction and these just horrible situations that had driven them to this. And that is the positive side of stress. The positive side of stress and pain and difficulties, they drive us to find a deeper resilience, a deeper peace. And so we can have a respect for the circumstances, even a faith in the circumstances that drive us into that. Think, this is teaching me, this is transforming me, this is shaping me, this is helping me to find deeper and deeper and deeper levels of peace and acceptance and resilience and strength. And then even if somebody else, it's one thing if just things are going on, inanimate things are going wrong, but if somebody's intentionally making our life difficult, that's the real next level practice, right? Somebody who's really, you've arrived when somebody is a complete ass and you're just like, wow, this person's really teaching me how far I have to come. There was an episode, I'll tell you, there's some possibility I might not be sitting here giving these meditation classes now if 1 year ago I had not had an episode, an interaction with someone that was a wake-up call to me that said, dude, you're losing your touch. You need to get back to meditating. If my wife had said that, I'm like, yeah, maybe. But it's like when I had this interaction and I'm just like, okay, I'm losing my touch. We got to take this stuff seriously again. And that person, I can be deeply, deeply grateful for. And you can be, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but you can be deeply grateful for this person, because this person is like a real spiritual guide, right? Bow to this person, because it's like, okay, still got a lot of room to progress. And if you have that, if you have the opportunity to, and so this is a way of just changing our attitude. And what we're doing is we're telling ourselves a different story, right? We're storytelling primates. So you can change the story, right? And what's true of all the best stories? They all have a disaster in chapter 2, right? Chapter 1 always starts off like, oh, happy, happy, happy. And then chapter 2 is always a disaster. And then, chapters 3, 4, 5 are digging yourself out. And then the last chapter is always like, oh, and everything worked out fine in the end. And one of my good friends is a writer. I'm not sure I captured it perfectly well, but that's basically the thrust of every single book in the world, right? That's what makes a good story. You are currently living through the disaster phase of your story. I don't know. I don't know what part in the story you are, but anytime you anytime you're at a disaster bit in your life, you just think, okay, this is chapter 2. Okay, now I know where I am, right? This is the part where, okay, I have to deal with it and think, how can I turn this around, and how can I accept it, and how can I change myself, and this, just changing our story, giving ourselves a new context, that's wisdom. That's a little voice of wisdom that we can internalize to change how we feel. And if you tell yourself a different story, you'll feel differently. It feels very different to think, okay, this is the beginning of how I learn greater resilience, as opposed to thinking this is the end of all of the good things that I'd enjoyed, right? It's a very different story, gives very different feelings. So we learn to tell ourselves better stories. All right. So happy to have had a chance to share these thoughts and experiences. And maybe what we can do is just spend a bit of time in meditation contemplating how we're in chapter 2 of this of our own story, and think about the disasters we're living through right now, and think, okay, where could this go? Like, what could this teach me? How could I learn from this? And how can I have respect for the people who are playing different parts in this story in my life? All right, so let's again settle in for some meditation on this topic. Breathing in deeply, in and out, just resetting. How quickly we accumulate some tension, we just allow ourselves to reset. And we can bring to mind the difficult situations we're facing right now. And just like even both the bad situations and the good situations in a good story are both worthy of equal respect. We can think, I can have respect even for the challenges in my life, even for the people who are making my life challenging. How are these people teaching me, helping me to change? if we are rejecting the worst, most painful parts of our experience, we may be rejecting many, many other aspects of our experience as well. We may not be fully accepting our reality, our present circumstances. So patience drives our mind into accepting reality. And we can make a decision to build respect for difficult situations, respect, even faith for difficult situations, people who make our life challenging, thinking these are the people who really drive us deeper, deeper, deeper into inner peace and acceptance. These are the people who really help us to change and shape our mind. These are our real teachers. We can think in the short time here, our mind has changed, our life has changed through just listening, contemplating, taking these teachings in. So what kind of beneficial results, ideally, what would be the best case scenario to unfold out of this brief time here? What kind of good results could arise for ourselves and others? We focus on this for a minute. And then we can open our eyes and arise from the meditation.